Today I am going to talk about padding because most probably if you're not in the know-how, you are using it wrong. And if you want to meet me on a one-on-one Zoom call, maybe you have some bugs or you want to learn some SwiftUI, go and check out Rebeloper.com where you can book a one-on-one session with me. Now, for today's tutorial, I have prepared a little bit of, two texts basically inside a vertical stack. We have this text of title, of the font title. This will be really important as you will see later in the video. And I just added some background color to the second text also with a body font and a background of red with an opacity of 0.3. And finally, the whole container, the vertical stack with a background of blue. As you can see right over here under the preview. So, what is padding? Well, padding is basically pushing out from the actual view that we are putting it on. So, let's just say we are adding a simple padding on the container. Let's just do this. Usually, you just do something like this. And as you can see, the blue kind of popped out, and that's our default padding. And let's just also take care of dynamic type because that's the whole point of this tutorial. So we are going to make this dynamic type proof. So let's see what happens when I just change the dynamic type. So let's just go all the way down and all the way up. And if you noticed, or maybe you didn't, but I will tell you, that padding of a default, which is basically nil, you could just add in here nil, maybe it's the same thing. That's the default value of the padding, stays the same. And in some cases, you do want to have that, but in usually not all cases, you want to change that. And that's what we are going to do. So let's just add in our paddings first. And also we are going to talk about spacer. So yeah, let's just add in here. So for the subtitle text that scales with dynamic type text, I'm just going to duplicate this line with the color of red, and I'm going to add in here green, and I'm going to add in a padding right between those. So this is our padding that we added right over here. And also now we have the default values for the spacing, because spacing is kind of like padding, and I just want to join these two together in this padding related tutorial. So I'm going to add spacing right over here to the CG float. Let's just go with nil for now. That's the default value, and I believe yes, it did not change anything right over here. Great. So these are the default values, and if we use dynamic type, you will see that actually they don't change at all. Maybe the spacing, yeah. So what we want to do, let's just go back to the large, is to make this not the default nil value, because usually you want to have your own custom ones. So what I do not recommend, but many developers do, is just add a simple spacing. So I just have 16 right over here, and that is a constant. Then see right over there, and right now if I just change these, it stays the same. So it's not having that dynamic type. We're going to change that later on. So when you are adding constant numbers like 16, or let's just have here a padding of 8 and 24. So small, medium, and large. So these are constants. They will not change with the changes of dynamic type. So what do? Well, we adapt and add a scaled metric. So what is a scaled metric? Let's just write out one for this small one right over here. And it's shown right over here if you remember it on the subtitle. So at scaled metric, and I'm going to choose, you can just go and use the default one, scaled metric, but I'm just going to go even a step further and use this one with the relative-to. Let's remove the wrap value, we don't need that. Relative-to, and we are going to choose right over here dot body. Remember, our subtitle has a font of body, so it will be relative to the body. And let's just name this var small equals 8. And you could just add in also of type CG float, but it infers it correctly. And now I will just replace this with small. You can see it checking it out, and now whenever I change the dynamic type, it will shrink with it or it will grow with it. As you can see, this is actually not 8 pixels. It kind of looks like the padding, that the spacing between the vertical stack elements, so 16. So this is really nice to have. So if I just go back to large, the initial value, this is the scale metric relative to the body of 8. Now, what does this scale metric do? Well, whenever you change the dynamic type, this number will scale with it. It just shrink with it or scale with it, but it is going to be dynamic. It's not a constant anymore. And also, it is relative to the body, because the font title and the font body, it's different how they scale with dynamic type. So the proportion, it's very different. Subtle, but very different. So you want to, most probably you want to set also to what relative to you want this scaled metric to behave to. So then I'm just going to duplicate this 2 times and just have medium and then large. And then I'm just going to have 16 and 24 and then replace it. So right over here, we just go medium, and right over here, we would just go and have large. And now let's take a look at how it behaves with dynamic type. First of all, this is the large one. This is the default one, the initial one. Let's just scale it all the way down. It looks really nice. And then scale it all the way up. Now, this is very different, as you saw earlier. Now, maybe because the large one is relative to body, maybe you just want to set it to title. Let's just see how that looks like. I believe it will look a little bit better. But most importantly, what you want to do is make sure that you test these out. You change the dynamic type and see how it looks like. Just go away. EX2, usually go for large. That's the initial default one. Go all the way down to extra small, and then all the way up to AX5. And that will cover all of the dynamic type ranges. Now, scale metric needs to be basically added onto the view, because when the view is recalculated, it's also recalculating the scale metric value. So it's not something that you could just have an enum about, or is it? Well, you could not use an enum actually, but you could use a dynamic property. And that's really great, because now we can reuse these scale metric values across multiple views. So instead of having them right over here, I'm just going to create outside of our content view a struct called scaled spacing, maybe. Yeah. The important part is that this needs to be a dynamic property. And what I'm going to do is just copy these out, like cut it out, because I'm going to use them from the scaled spacing. Just put them in there, which is, exactly the same thing. Now, instead of adding multiple scale metrics in multiple views, I can just refer this. So let's just have this as a private var inside the content view, private. So, it's not going to be initialized when you are accessing the content view. Anyway, private var spacing. And that will be a scaled spacing, just like that. And there you have it. Now we can access the small, medium, and large. So I'm just going to copy out spacing and just add it spacing dot medium, spacing dot small, and spacing dot large. And that's the same thing. Now we have a dynamic property. You don't have to put it onto the view, but basically it is on the view because the spacing is initialized right over here on the view, on the content view. But now you can have a more generalized structure for your paddings, spacings. So let's just have this a little bit refresh itself. So here we go for the large. As you can see, same thing. Extra small, and then AX5, the biggest dynamic type. There you have it. That's how you should use spacing / padding together with scaled metric with a relative to a property as a dynamic type. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, and you want even more, if you want to talk with me on a one-on-one Zoom session, go ahead and check out rebeloper.com where you can book an hour with me.